This is Mitch Dubin SOC. I have been a camera operator for over 30 years, and you are listening to the Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I'm a director and owner of BC Media Productions. And this is the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. On today's episode, we've got Mitch Dubin. He is a legendary camera operator, and if you haven't heard his name before, you certainly have seen his work. He's basically Steven Spielberg's go-to camera operator and has done 17 Spielberg films. So you can imagine the stories that you are about to hear in this episode. But even beyond all of that, I think more importantly is that we talk about the role of a camera operator. A lot of people don't realize that the director of photography isn't necessarily the one operating the camera. So all the glory goes to the DPs, and for good reason, of course, to all you DPs out there. But the unsung heroes in cinematography and in filmmaking are the camera operators. And Mitch is going to tell us all about what his role is, how he interacts with the director, how he interacts with the director of photography, and of course the actors as well. So there's a lot of information in here that we don't really get to talk too much about on Go Creative Show, which is why I am so excited to share this one with all of you. So let's dive right in because we have so much to talk about with legendary camera operator Mitch Dubin. So I'm here with Mitch Dubin, SOC ACO. He's a camera operator for so many films and TV shows that you know and love. I'm talking Saving Private Ryan, Lincoln, Any Given Sunday, Jerry Maguire. He's right now in Chicago working on Fargo, and anybody that knows this show knows that we cover Fargo every year because I'm obsessed with it. And so excited that the show is back and recording again. So Mitch, welcome to Go Creative Show.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
What I want to talk to you about mostly today is the role and the life of a camera operator, because I think a lot of people have this assumption that the directors of photography are the ones operating the camera. And more often than not, that is not the case. Do you find that in your travels? Like when you're, talking to people that may not know the inner workings of cinematography, are you finding that as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk to people that are, let's say, uninitiated in the industry, and you say you're a camera operator, they look at you and they say, "What does that mean? What do you do?" They have no idea that there is a craft or an art of someone who's behind the lens. And yeah, people just assume it's the cinematographer, which is unfortunate. But yeah.
So how do you describe your role on set as camera operator?
Well, it depends on who I'm talking with, of course. But, if it is with film students or with, the sort of initiated that understand a little bit about the industry, or I take it a step back. If it's with someone who doesn't know anything about the industry, you say, well, I'm the person that pans and tilts the camera and then sort of walk away. But if it's because it's a much more complicated job than panning and tilting the camera. In fact, when I do talk to people who understand the industry, that's probably the first thing I say to them is that camera operating is 10% of that job is panning and tilting the camera, because most of the job is really problem solving and communicating and understanding the emotional content of one lens, 1 millimeter of the lens to another, what the story is of moving the camera. It's a very intuitive, instinctual storytelling process. And it's not really that technical. It's really more of an emotional response, a storytelling process using the 4 lines of a frame.
The claim to fame of Mitch Dubin, I think, is your 17, I think it is, films with Steven Spielberg. Like you're Steven Spielberg's guy. You're his camera operator. And like that to me, I think is, first of all, it's incredible to me to see the loyalty that a director has with their camera operator. And you were with Spielberg throughout his entire career. Like basically his real rise in height of his career, you were there alongside. And I'd like to dig into that a little bit and just kind of start with, how do you even begin with somebody like that at his level? You had mentioned just a moment ago, every new experience you start terrified. This must have been one of the most terrifying experiences for you.
One day I get this, I eventually moved back to LA, and I get a call from Janusz Kaminski, and Janusz asked if we could have lunch, and met him at the Rose Cafe in Venice. And he came with Steven Meisler, who was the camera assistant of Janusz's assistant. Now Stevie's shooting. And he asked me if I would be willing to work with him as an operator. And I said, yeah, of course. And so we did a couple of other movies before the first movie I did with Janusz and Steven. The first movie I did was the second Jurassic Park. So I didn't do Schindler's List. I started with Steven right after Schindler's List, this next movie. Now, Steven on Schindler's List was the movie that he finally was recognized as critically as a great film director, and the movie won all sorts of awards. And then the next movie he chose to do was the sequel to the first Jurassic Park. It was a strange choice, I think, for Steven, and I think he was really sort of unhappy that he had made that choice. It was a monetary choice, I think. And I have to say, so it was the first movie I did with Steven, and he wasn't in the best of moods making it. And it was a really difficult experience. And I remember telling Janusz at one point, I said, I can't work with this asshole anymore. But I'm not doing it. This is it, Janusz. I'm doing this film. I'm not doing another film with him, because he just, Steven was he's mellowed a lot in the years that I've worked with him, but he was a screamer. He was impatient, and you had to earn his respect. And if he didn't know you, he was really hard. And he was really, operating was a big thing for him. In fact, he used to operate his own camera. And so he was really hard on me. And I remember, we were shooting over at Universal, and at lunch, I would just go to my car and I would sit in there by myself and literally just shake.
Wow.
And it was it was really a horrible experience. Janusz convinced me. He said, no, Mitch, you give Steven another chance. And we did another movie. I think the next one was Amistad. And each movie I did with him was a better experience. And then obviously Saving Private Ryan was a great experience. And from that point on, he trusted me, and we got along great. And I love Steven. Working with Steven is a complete inspirational experience. Every movie's a little different. It's very challenging. Whether you like his movies or not, he is an absolute master at the camera. I mean, he tells a story. He knows how to use the camera in ways that no one else has ever been able to do, I think. And it's every movie is a challenge, and that's what makes it fun.
Can you point to a lesson that you learned from him that impacted your work moving forward on his movies and just in general?
Well, I can tell you one story that I learned from Steven. This was on Jurassic Park, Lost World. And we had a very long dolly shot that was set up, and it was outside in the dirt. So, the wedges sink in the mud or whatever. So we did one take and another take. And then I think probably on the third take, we did the shot, and there was a bump in it because the track had settled. And, Steven, we finished the shot. Steven yells, "Cut. All right, we're moving on, print it." And I go running over to Steven. No, you can't. We have to do another one because we had a big bump in the track. And he said, "I'm not doing it again. It's in the movie." And I was like horrified. And then I watched the movie when it came out, and I never saw the bump in the movie. And I know it's there, but I learned from Steven that you make choices that there really, in reality, there really is never a perfect shot. In all the years I've done this, I don't know if I've ever done a perfect shot. There's always something that you could do better. And that was a moment I learned from Steven that, you have to make compromises as a camera operator. You have to understand when you really do need another take, because when you ask for another take, it's taking away from the director's time, the actor's time, everyone else's commitment. There might have been a great performance that the actor gave, and now you're asking them to do it again. So I always call, working as a camera operator especially, is sort of the art of compromise. It really is an art to understand when it's okay to compromise, when you don't get the perfect shot, when it's okay to move on, or when it really is important to do another take. So, yeah, that was a lesson I learned from Steven.
Now, working with Steven Spielberg, you said that he's a master at understanding how to use the camera. Is that a good experience for you as a camera operator, to have somebody that is so knowledgeable about the camera versus maybe somebody that focuses entirely on performance and not on the camera at all?
I work really closely with the director. In fact, I always say that a camera operator might get hired by the DP cinematographer, but you end up working for the director. And so with Steven, so there are many different types of directors. There are directors, I think, that are writer directors that are really concerned with the script, that they wrote the script, and they're concerned with the actors saying their words correctly. There are directors that are really focused on being actors. They might have been an actor earlier in their career, and now they're directing. There's directors that are purely visual directors, people like Michael Bay, for example, that are really good with the camera, but that it's about getting the cool shots. Excuse me. And then there are directors that are a combination of all of those things, and those directors are the masters to me, and that's Steven. I mean, Steven has written his own scripts. He's really good with script. He's great with the actors, and he really understands how to use the camera to tell the story. And so, yeah, as a camera operator, there's nothing better than to work with a director that understands the camera, because you want to be pushed. You don't want to do. When I work with a director that doesn't like working with a camera, that just sort of defers it to the cinematographer and the camera operator, it's not nearly as much fun, because you really want to explore new areas. You want to be pushed. You want to discover things about what the story can be visually and challenged in your craft. So, that's what Steven does. He thinks like he's, a 27 millimeter lens when he watches a rehearsal, and he can block out the action and the actors. And it's like, I always find, Steven shows up usually a half an hour before call. We always have, an assistant there with the lenses, and he walks around with a finder. He doesn't really talk with anybody. He has in his head what he's looking for, and then he finds that first shot of the scene, and then he's done. He's happy. We do that shot, and then that shot will lead to the next shot, which leads to the next shot. He never shot this. He will sometimes storyboard if it's a heavy visual effect shot, or lately he's done more, previs instead of storyboards when it's a really either big action or heavy visual effects. But if it's a normal scene without any of those elements, he just arrives and figures it out on the day. And it's amazing to watch him go through that process.
It's also amazing that you've been with him for such a long time, over such a span of films, 17 films with Steven Spielberg. Yeah. It's crazy. Can you talk to me about maybe his evolution as a director and your evolution as a camera operator throughout that experience?
After doing 17 movies with Steven, the one thing I've learned, and I learned this actually pretty early, is that I really understand Steven's shorthand. And it's like I understand his language, Spielbergian, I call it. And if I for some reason am not there to hear him describe what the shot is, let's say, we're still wrapping up something from the previous shot, maybe a visual effect element or something, and Steven is already jumping ahead and he's talking about describing the shot. And if I'm not there and I hear the shot told to me by somebody else, it is always wrong. Mm-hmm. It's amazing, because when he describes a shot, I get it. I understand completely what it is he wants to do. And even if he's not 100% descriptive of it, I understand how to fill in the blanks of what he wants. And if I hear it from somebody else, it's amazing. It's uncanny how it's always wrong. You know, he'll come back from wherever he might be and say, what is this? This is not what I said. You know,
Wow.
and so anyway, so I understand his instincts. I understand his point of view. I understand how he likes to tell stories visually. It's been a great experience for me. I love that Steven doesn't do a lot of close-ups. He saves the close-ups for the important moments that he wants to use them for. And he likes to shoot big masters that will run the whole scene, so the actors get a chance to play the whole scene, and with the intent of using it as one shot, but then knowing that we'll probably go in and cut some coverage in there. But it's always based on that big master shot. And it doesn't matter how difficult it is to get it so that we can run through the whole scene. We do it, again, knowing that it might get cut up. But I think that's really a great way to work, is to shoot a big master, not think about coverage until you've shot that master and you see how it plays and where you might need to, implement it with other coverage, closer shots.
Can you talk to me about your relationship with a director of photography versus a director, how it's different, and what your role is?
I have to preface that by saying every show is a little different. It depends on the strength of the director visually. But for example, if, when I did Jerry Maguire, Cameron Crowe is a writer. He's a great writer, and he's a wonderful, sweet guy, and he's great with the actors, but he didn't really know the camera that well. So in that situation, my collaboration was with Janusz, the cinematographer. And Cameron depended on Janusz and I to figure out the blocking and how the camera was the choice of lenses and where it was. With Steven, it's different because Steven's so specific about the camera. He knows so much about it that I sort of communicate directly with Steven, and Janusz does the lighting, and it gets very sort of segmented that way. And then there are other shows and so it's somewhere in between those two extremes, depending on the show, the director, the cinematographer. And so it can be a tricky position as a camera operator, because you can be stuck in a very awkward position between what the cinematographer wants and what the director wants, because they don't always agree. And so one of the jobs of a camera operator is being the diplomat. It's like being the Henry Kissinger of the set, to make both people try to come together in an understanding of what the shot needs to be.
Can you point to a moment where that happened? I mean, I'm sure there's many, but something that maybe the audience will be able to remember from a film?
God, I don't know if I could. I don't think I can remember a specific instance. I'd have to think about that one. But
yeah,
the point I think to make is that usually, and I'm going to get into trouble for saying this.
Get into trouble. It's just us filmmakers here. It's fine.
But usually when there's a conflict between a cinematographer and a director, that it's usually the director is usually correct, and because it's about storytelling. And the cinematographer, God bless them, they just want it to look beautiful, but that means that they want to put their lights. It's to them, it's about where they can put their lights. And if the shot that the director wants sees this place where they want to hide a light or rig a light, then that changes the whole lighting plan that he might have for that scene, that shot. And so that's where the conflicts come in. And I always say, if you really get down to the core of what the shot is about, what the scene is about, what the the truth is of the shot, that inevitably there shouldn't be any discussion. We know what the shot has to be, and if the cinematographer has to put his light someplace else, that's again is part of the art of compromise, of knowing when you can compromise to do what is the essential part of what we do, which is tell a story.
Talk to me about your prep process for a film. Where does it begin for you? And, how do you begin to get involved in a new project?
Yeah, good question. Usually I'd say we don't really get much prep as camera operators. We, obviously we'll get a script sent to us and any, visual references or storyboards or previs, but we usually show up on day one of shooting
Wow.
without any prep. Now, more recently, it really does help to have prep, especially seeing locations.
Yeah.
So I'll get invited to go on location scouts. I think you might have, there was a question that was thrown out about the difference between TV and film, but which we can get to because it has to do with prep a little bit. But generally speaking, I don't get much prep. And it would be nice. I think it would be helpful, but I'm fine sometimes without. I think I had mentioned earlier that concept of Gary Winogrand, which is to be completely open and in the moment of the frame. And sometimes, not showing up until day one of shooting, it helps with that because I'm fresh and I'm open and you see the actors rehearse and you sort of feel it without any of the baggage of prep, and you could just go right into capturing those performances in a unbiased way.
So you arrive most of the time right there on set, first day. And I think that kind of makes sense about your being inspired by Gary because, looking at his work and how you're describing him right now, it is that, kind of just being there and capturing it.
I was just going to say real quick, I think one of the arts of a camera operator, it sounds corny, but it's a little Zen. You have to really be completely in the moment and you can't be thinking about, like I mentioned earlier, what they think you think they're thinking or what, where, there's so many things going on outside those four frame lines. I always think it would be a funny movie if, you show the shot and then you widen it up a few millimeters and you see the chaos that happens around the frame. But you can't be thinking about any of that. You have to be completely present. And I find what happens to me is that you're so concentrated inside that frame that when the shot is over and they say check the gate, it all goes away. Like when we used to show dailies, when we had film, I sit in the theater and I had no memory at all of shooting any of these shots. I would have to nudge the camera system and say, did we do that? I don't remember that at all. And then, when I see a movie for the first time, in the theater, I look at it completely like a fresh audience member because I don't remember hardly anything about the shots because it's that thing you concentrate so diligently and that you have to.
Are you not paying attention?
Yeah, no, I can't say it's that.
Walk me through a typical day for a camera operator. Where does it begin when you first arrive?
Breakfast.
Most important.
No, yeah. So you arrive, they'll give you, you'll have the sides of what the scene is that we're shooting that day. And I've already read the script, but I'll look through the sides just to refresh my memory of what it is that we're doing. And then there is the first thing that happens. There's would be a private rehearsal, which would be the actors, the director, the cinematographer, and oftentimes I will be there, the script supervisor, and myself. Now, it's not always me. Sometimes the directors really, really like to have it private, and sometimes even the cinematographer won't be in there. But most of the time, it will be those people, director, actors, script supervisor, sometimes props if they need to go in there, and myself and the cinematographer. And then there's where the director is blocking the actors, and where you might, if it's appropriate, make a suggestion on how better help the blocking that will work well with the storytelling process. But again, that depends on the job. Like I wouldn't make that suggestion all the time for sure. So you sit quietly and you watch, and then there'll be a bigger rehearsal where they'll bring in the keys, the rest of the crew that needs to see it. Then the actors go back to hair and makeup, and the director describes the first shot, and then the grip department and myself, the dolly grip, and we'll start setting up that shot while they're lighting the scene, and then we have everything set up, and the actors come back in, and we shoot. And sometimes we rehearse before we shoot, and sometimes we shoot the rehearsals. And I have to say, it's much harder for the camera assistants, I know, and other people to shoot rehearsals, but I actually love to shoot rehearsals because there's something about doing it for the first time that it's inspiring. The actors they don't have to do it more than a few times, especially if it's an emotional scene. There's something more immediate that happens when you shoot immediately when you shoot the rehearsals. And even if it gets a little sloppy, sometimes that sloppiness helps in a weird way. Again, depending on the shot, but in the movie. But it's sort of inspiring, and it keeps you on your toes to shoot rehearsals.
Well, how do you keep yourself almost invisible from the talent? How do you make sure that you're not getting in the way of a performance? Because I think that's probably a really big part of operating camera.
Yeah. Again, I would say that there are two different styles of camera operating. One is a objective point of view, which is sort of the silent camera that you don't really are aware of it in the audience, that there is a camera working, even though you're constantly as an operator making decisions about where the camera goes and the choice of lenses and movement, but it's still a quieter point of view. And then there's the subjective point of view, something like Saving Private Ryan, where the camera was another character in the film. So it's those two extremes, and then maybe the balance between them. But I think most of the time it's a objective point of view camera. So you try not to get in the way. You're there to tell the story without it being in everyone's face. But you're still really close with the actors, and you're interacting with them. And a camera operator does have relationships with actors. It's something that you're probably the closest person to the actor, and when the director calls cut and an actor looks up, usually the first person that they will look at is the camera operator. And in a million years, I would never give a note to an actor, but I'm always there to support them and to let them know that I have their back, and that whatever they decide to do, it's fine. We'll be there with them, and there's ever any judgment or, we're really there to support them. And I think they appreciate that. And, I've heard from actors when you might, direct and ask an actor to be on this mark or that mark, or, the light is better if they turn this way, or when you start giving them technical information, there are some actors that don't want to hear any of that. But I think most of the actors really appreciate that because they know that they don't have to think about that now, that there's somebody there that's watching out for them with that stuff. So it's a pretty unique relationship between an operator and an actor, but it's good.
You really are. Listening to you, I'm realizing how the camera operator is really the common thread between communication between the actors, the directors, the cinematographers. Like you're right there in the middle, getting direction and kind of transferring information in a way from everyone to everyone else. Like you're really right there in the middle.
Yeah, I call it the eye of the hurricane.
There you go, the eye of the hurricane. But with all this direction coming to you, is there any room for the Mitch Dubin style? Is there any room for improvisation and developing, something behind the camera that's all your own?
There's a couple things to say about that, but I would say, first of all, you might get a number one mark from the director or cinematographer, and you might get the N mark from the director or cinematographer. But when the shot starts, everything between that number one and number two is completely me. It's completely the operator. I'm making decisions 24 frames a second about where to put the frame. And so that is me. That is an expression of my craft and my art, my expression. That's one aspect to it. I was going to say something else, and now I think I've forgotten. But I think that filmmaking is a collaborative process. So there's always parts of everybody in every shot. And I think that I do have a particular style of working, but a lot of that is determined by the style of the director. And so I think the expression of who I am is sort of a chameleon-like, because it can change from one show to the next. It would be burdensome if every film I ever worked on had to have a certain Mitch Dubin look. I mean, that would be inappropriate. But I definitely have inputs about how it looks and what's the best way of telling this story, which may be unique to me. I'm not sure. And
it seems as though you're able to bring everything to life. I mean, I can only imagine directors and DPs going to you and almost making sure that something can happen. I mean, they're coming up with ideas, but you're the one that has to actually do it. I mean, are you ever in situations where you're the one saying, it either can't happen or yes, it can, and you're sort of pushing ideas, forward and backwards based on, quite frankly, just what you're able to do?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, when again, we have to separate Steven out from. But although I have to say, even with Steven, sometimes he'll come up with a shot that is undoable, and I have to tell him, Steven, we can try to do the shot, but we're going to spend a lot of time setting it up, and I don't think you're going to be happy with it. So let's see if we can come up with a better idea. And he responds immediately and says, okay, let's do it this way. So yeah, I mean, there are certain times when there will be, a shot, and it could either come from someone like Steven that might be overly ambitious, or from a director that doesn't really understand the camera well enough to know that it's either impossible or to do, or impractical, or just a bad idea.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, it becomes me, the person that has to translate that to the director, saying, and probably the approach I would take is, that's a great shot, but what about this? Maybe instead, might be a better idea. You don't ever want to say, are you crazy? That will never work.
What was the most challenging film or TV show, just project in general, that you've worked on?
Saving Private Ryan obviously was a really challenging job. And I've told this before, is that because again, there is an example of no prep. I show up on maybe a couple of days before shooting, and we didn't know we were going to be handheld for the whole movie until we finished the first shot. And then all of a sudden, the whole movie's handheld, and we weren't really equipped for doing. We didn't have cameras that were handheld.
Was that because the decision was made after the first shot, or you just didn't know?
No, it was made after the first shot. That's my interpretation of it. I mean, people might have other stories, but the very first shot we did was in the movie was in the landing craft as the doors open to the German, to the beach of Normandy. And I was in the actual landing craft with the soldiers, and it's a small space. There was no way to get even a tripod in there. So the camera ended up on my shoulder, and the doors open, and all the effects go off, and the blood is flying and the flesh is flying. And it was so powerful and intense. And, being there handheld, you can't help but to react to all that that's happening. And the shot was over, and everybody was like covered in blood, including Steven, who was sitting up above me. And it was so emotional, the response, that the thing was, okay, everything we do now is going to be handheld. And I do think it was, that's what decision was made then. And we really weren't prepared for it. We had heavy cameras. We had, Panaflux cameras and image shakers and flashers, and it was really heavy. And
Wow.
I kept pleading to the assistants, we got to find a lighter camera. I'm going to die doing this. But, I've said this other times, I think in terms of, equipment and storytelling, and it actually worked out really well, because by having this really heavy camera and being unprepared, we were exactly like the soldiers that were landing on the beaches of Normandy. They came in on the wrong tide. They were overweight. Obviously, they're sinking to the bottom of the ocean, when they jump out of the boats. And it was, we were plodding up the beaches just like the soldiers were. And it was, when we finally got a lighter camera, which was at the time, I think it was a movie cam with a BNC lens, Panavision lens mount on it, was when we shot the last scene in Rommel, and where the soldiers now were more like, it was more like guerrilla warfare, run and gun. And I could run really fast, and I could keep up with the actors, and it was much more exciting and fast. Whereas on the beaches of Normandy, it was supposed to be plodding and slow. And it was, because we had these really heavy cameras. So it worked out in a funny way. But yes, that was a really hard, challenging film, because I didn't realize what the camera's responsibility was going to be so intense on that film.
Yeah.
And we would do these big scenes, especially on the Normandy stuff. We'd get one shot, one take at it, because it took so long to set up all the effects, the mortars and explosions and all the bullet hits, that it took them weeks to set up that stuff on the beach, that Steven didn't want to take the time to reset it up. So we literally had when we did one takes of all that stuff.
Wow. That's amazing. Camera operators must get incredible respect from the actors, because you're right there doing it. Like you're basically kind of another actor in the scene.
Yeah.
So the respect there must be incredible. And you're the closest to them. I mean, you've met so many people and worked with so many people, but was there any one person in particular that really shook you, that got you nervous, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be working with this actor or this director?
I get along very well with actors, because I have so much respect for their craft. They do something. I could never be an actor. It's a magical process. I don't know where it comes from, but this depth of understanding of the human character, and to be able to switch different characters from film to film and still be earnest and sincere, and have this understanding of that human situation in a way that you can translate it to the audience. It's like magic. It's really remarkable. So I have huge respect for actors, and I do anything I can to make it easier for them to feel comfortable and to do their job. But I've never felt intimidated by them, because it's a craft or an art, just like mine, and it's only because of the marketing and the stardom that the actors have to deal with, that makes their job seem like they're special, but they just love to be part of the crew. They don't really want any of that stuff. I mean, it's more like it comes with a price for them, but
there's got to be somebody though that you got the call that you're going to be working on a film, and you're like saying to your wife, you'll never believe who I'm working with. There has to be somebody.
But the thing is, those actors that I think you would say that are usually on Steven's movies, and on those movies, Steven's still the king.
That's true. That's true.
So that you have Tom Cruise. I've done a few movies with Tom and with Tom Hanks, and they're great actors, and they're really good guys. They're really wonderful people. But because it's Steven's directing, they would never they would never step out of line.
Yeah.
You know, they're there to do the job. And so it's it's a group, it's a collaborative process. I keep saying that. So no, I've never had issues with actors. I've never been, I don't know if intimidated is the word, because we're all working together.
Mm. In our last couple of minutes, I just want to get to a couple of short little things here. Do you have any preferred camera package right now? And I know a lot of that advice is coming from the director and of course the DP, but you know, if the decision were up to you, and maybe it is sometimes, is there something that you're sort of more interested in and like to use now?
Yeah, again, I'll say camera operating is really not a technical job. And honestly, I don't care what camera we use. All I care about is that there's a ground glass with 4 lines in a frame. And I don't like crosshairs in the ground glass. That's all I care about. I don't, and that we obviously have enough choice of lenses to choose from, but I don't care what make those lenses are. I just care that we have enough millimeter choices. Yeah. So I know that's a probably a disappointing answer to you, but it's
not disappointing to me. I think if anything, it's encouraging because it's about, it's about the work and not about the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it makes a huge difference for the cinematographer, the look of the film that he's trying to set up, maybe the lens choices, what manufacturer, what camera, because these days with digital cameras, it seems like where it used to be film stock would give different looks. Now every camera has a different look because of the chips and the whatever software that goes on inside of a digital camera gives different looks. But for me, it's film, digital, it doesn't matter. It's 4 lines to the frame. That's all I care about.
What was it like for you, the shift to digital?
Well, originally when the digital cameras first came out, the eyepieces were terrible. And it was almost like insulting, like, really? You're going to put this camera out and have us work with it? And I can't see a good image through this eyepiece? I mean, it was horrible. And thank goodness, we were still mainly working in film until like the second, third generation of these cameras came out. They finally put good eyepieces on them. And now the eyepieces are actually really good. And when Steven still shoots film. And so when I go back, we did West Side Story last summer. We shot it in film, and it was amazing. I put my eye to the eyepiece and I said, "Oh my God, this looks terrible," compared to a digital finder, because one of them reasons because they've made digital finders so good, but also they're not really maintaining film cameras like they used to. And so, the film cameras are breaking down and the eyepieces are turning yellow and it's hard to see focus. So it's now digital cameras have gotten better in a way. Yeah. I mean, film still looks great. I love it. But in terms of the working process, it's hard with film cameras.
And the last thing I wanted to talk about was production now during COVID. Is this your first, I know you're in Chicago now working on Fargo. Is this the first project you've worked on since, COVID broke out in March? Yeah. How are things different?
They're really different. Now I'm here now in Chicago quarantining. I've been tested twice, so we get tested every other day now, I think. We don't start shooting until Friday. So I can't tell you what it's going to be like on the set. I just know it's going to be different, and it's going to be awkward, and it's not going to be comfortable, and it's probably not going to be fun. Yeah, I think it's going to take away a lot of what made film sets so great to work on, which is a certain camaraderie and joking around and being lighthearted and being able to interact with the actors and everything that goes on in this collaborative process of soup of making a movie now is going to be, people are going to be uptight, and we have to keep our distance, and we have to wear all this PPE, and there's a certain protocol that has to happen. So I don't really know what it's going to be like. I just know it's going to be different. And you can check back with me in a week and I'll give you more specifics. But
I'm very curious. And we're going to be doing a series on Go Creative Show all about kind of getting back to work in the production industry and just kind of having little conversations here and there. You're at an interesting point because you haven't officially started yet, but what have you been told already that might be interesting for the audience to hear? Because there's a lot of people out there listening that haven't yet started their first, COVID project and are interested.
I want to just say real quick that we had the SOC. I'm part of the SOC and on the education committee, and we had a panel discussion that was with camera operators, about 5 of them that had already been back to work, and they talked about their experiences working. And it was everything from reality show shooting to TV to film, and it was really, really interesting. And we recorded it, and it's actually on the SOC webpage.
Oh wow, great!
So, and it you don't have to be a member to see it. It's right there on the homepage, and it's really worthwhile to listen to this. But I learned a lot listening to it. I mean, stupid little things like getting anti-fog spray for your glasses, because when you wear when you wear a mask at KN95, your glasses tend to fog up. Or how to tape the mask so that the air doesn't come out of the mask and fog your glasses.
Yeah.
And that when you wear, I never thought about this, but when you wear a mask, which we all obviously have to do, when you're wearing it for 10 hours a day, it really irritates your ears. Now, who would have? I didn't know that. So there are actually ear protectors that you can buy that you strap the mask to that instead of your ears. Stupid little things like that, just to help you through this process of working with all this PPE.
Yep.
So we have to wear face shields, but face shields reflect in funny ways, and for an operator, it's going to be hard wearing a face shield. So I got goggles, snowboarding goggles instead. So things like that. But
wow,
I haven't been out there yet, so it's going to be interesting.
Wow. Well, good luck. You're on a great project. You've got West Side Story coming out that everyone's excited about. Lucky that got done before everything got locked down.
Well, we finished shooting that last summer. We shot it a year ago, and the intent was always for it to be released, after Thanksgiving. But I don't really know what they're going to do if the movie theaters aren't open. I know Steven's not going to put it on a streaming channel, so it might still take a while for it to come out. But that was it was so much fun to do that. I'd never done a musical before. And talk about challenge. That was a whole new challenge, because there's all different rules about musical dancing numbers that I had never done before.
Yeah.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Oh, that would be
great.
When that comes out, I'd love to have you back to talk about that, because I think that'd be really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really interesting. I thought I, had done it long enough that I wasn't going to have too many new experience. I was totally challenged in a great way by that, because everything is music motivated. And if you wait to see it, you're late. You have to always, I had a headphone with music in it all the time, because I had to take all my cues off of music. It would be like, all right, Mitch, on the downbeat of the 4th verse and the 3rd stanza, you need to whip pan over to this dancer jumping in the air. And I'm going, wow, I don't even know what that means.
I can imagine the rehearsals and the prep for that must have been more than you're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it was hot New York summer, and we're shooting in the streets. So we didn't want to rehearse too much. We shot a lot of rehearsals for that. But I would have the assistant choreographer next to me sometimes, and he would tap my shoulder when it was time for me to at least the first couple of takes. And then I did.
How many cameras were on that?
Steven mainly does one camera. He's a one camera director. We rarely do. But for the dance stuff, we would have 2 cameras. That's it.
Wow. That's great. It's so crazy just knowing that it's hot, you're rolling on rehearsals, you're probably not doing a million takes, and just the confidence of everybody to just do this with 2 cameras is amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting. I have to say, I have never cried before on a set behind camera, but West Side Story is so emotional. I didn't realize, and there was this one scene where it's really emotional. It's very moving. And I'm shooting it. And all of a sudden, I feel my chest tighten up. And I'm going, Mitch, you cannot cry right now because you're in the middle of shooting this scene. But it was like, it was really emotional. I mean, it was weird.
West Side Story got you, but Saving Private Ryan did not.
Well, you know, the funny thing about Saving is that it was so much fun to shoot because the actors they're all really hilarious characters. And Tom Hanks is such a great guy that it was really fun. And it never occurred to me how serious it was until I saw the movie for the first time. And then I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I do not remember shooting this movie. This is so intense. But it wasn't. When we were shooting, you shoot things one shot at a time anyway, but it was more fun and laughs and jokes than it was reflected to the nature of what the film really was. You know? Wow.
And lastly, advice to aspiring, filmmakers that are thinking about camera operation, director of photography work. What advice do you have for them?
To be a cinematographer and to be a camera operator are very different choices. So, and my advice to anyone that wants to be a cinematographer is that you will be a better cinematographer if you use a camera operator. I am 100% convinced of that. I think there are a lot of cinematographers that think that they should be operating their own camera. And I understand that from their point of view, but I will tell you from my experiences that you will be a better cinematographer if you have a good camera operator. Mm. And for those that choose to be a camera operator, I would say it's a great choice because it's really the best job on the set in the end. It's really fun. It's a great job. And, as a camera operator, you're going to be working with the actors and the directors and the cinematographers and the rest of the crew. Like we said, the eye of the hurricane. And it's a really important position. And it's a great place to experience the filmmaking process.
I love that. Mitch Dubin, SOC ACO, camera operator for a whole bunch of stuff. We just scratched the surface of your work here on this show, but there's so much to dig into. And your work is excellent. And I'm so thankful that you came on Go Creative Show to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate it. And we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, I know. We'll need a whole season of episodes to talk about all the work that you've been involved in. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Is that a question?
Yeah. Do you have a website, Instagram, all of that? No.
I have an Instagram.
All right.
I have an Instagram. I think it's just my name, Mitch Dubin.
There you go.
I'm going to pitch the SOC for a minute, and that we have on our website, if you're a member, there's a whole channel we've been producing all this educational stuff. And there's some really interesting educational pieces. We did a whole 30-hour lecture series with AFI students, and it really covered every aspect about camera operating. And it was during the quarantine, so that it's amazing the camera operators we got that are teaching these classes, the best camera operators in the world. So those things are really interesting. And then when there's some other little things, I did a piece with the Dolly Grip on our collaboration, which is really interesting. So there's, you should check that out.
You should. It's an SOC, by the way, Society of Camera Operators, SOC.org. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. That video that Mitch was talking about, getting back to work, is right here on the page. 2 hours of content here. And that's something I'm definitely going to be checking out. And I know you guys would like that too. Any other last words, Mitch, before we part ways here?
No,
there you go.
I just think, it's strange times right now, and the world feels like it's upside down, and it's going to be interesting going back to work, but we will go back to work, and hopefully one day it'll all be back to what we remember.
Yeah. I'm hopeful of that too. Thank you so much, Mitch, for being on, and we'll definitely have you back, and good luck on Fargo.
Yeah, thanks very much.
All right, I want to thank Mitch Dubin for coming on the show and talking to us all about his experiences out there as a camera operator. I also want to thank Connor Crosby for producing the show. You can find him at ignitionvisuals.com. And of course, Matt Russell for mixing and mastering and making the show sound so good. You can find him at gainstructure.com. Now, subscribe to Go Creative Show on your favorite podcast app. And of course, follow us across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And we're going to be doing some live Go Creative shows on YouTube. So definitely subscribe to us there so you don't miss out. I want to thank our sponsors, MZ, Education for Creatives, and Post Lab, stress-free collaboration in Final Cut Pro and Premiere. Without these people, the show wouldn't exist, so please support those that support us. And of course, we want to thank all of you out there for listening and sharing and having so much fun with us here at Go Creative Show. We absolutely love it and cannot wait to see what's next for Go Creative Show. So stay tuned for more. And of course, we'll see you next week on another episode of Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.